Hi everyone, this is Sunit here this evening for our next Soul Hangout. And in this video, we are discussing the words utmost potential. So utmost potential are words, also in relation to any singular word or more, where we're going to walk you through a process of understanding what it means to define, redefine, and live words, right? So for this hangout, let's look at the words utmost potential. And the context that we're going to be having a look at here is walking it from the moments in your daily life experience or even your general life experience, where, for example, you had let's say a conversation and it went into a conflict or an argument, where during or afterward you reflect on it and a part of you goes, but I shouldn't have done that. I could have handled it better. Why didn't I just say this way or do this that way? Those moments where you just sometimes know you could have done better, you could have done more. And another context is where, you were placed in a position or asked to stand in a particular point of responsibility, but, you've never, ever been exposed to such a position or a responsibility or a point in your life ever before. Meaning you did not necessarily at that time or that moment have the skills or abilities or talents or even history, and even before you tried, you kind of already gave up, simply because you couldn't yet see yourself standing in such a position or responsibility. All right, so let's have a look at a example, also taking it from my own life, where I had faced exactly such a point in the second context that I discussed, where I was asked by an individual to stand in a point or position of responsibility in a company, and I essentially had to manage many people. And not only manage people, but also manage that part of the company. And this happened in my very early 20s. I had no exposure to managing people in the sense that I was very shy, very introverted, very fearful, anxious. I was not someone who would very easily or readily just go up to people and start talking to them, and let alone leading them, directing them, giving them responsibilities and tasks and things like that. And within that, I'd also never worked for a company. So I was really thrown into the deep end with such a request. And my immediate response within that moment was no. I can't do that. That's impossible. I've never done anything like this in my life before. And it was a fascinating moment because the individual then asked me, all right, if you don't take this point in this moment in your life right now, how are you ever going to know if you'd ever be capable of it? If I give you the skills, the techniques, if I coach you, teach you, guide you, maybe every so now and then allow you to make the mistakes that you can learn. All you have to do is say yes and allow yourself to walk the path to develop everything that you need to be able to do this. So, that very question the individual asked me allowed me to question myself, in terms of just seeing in that moment how I was so close to giving up on an opportunity just because I did not in that particular moment see the potential within me. But that also opened my eyes to so many different moments in my life, in my past, where I didn't even know that I could create myself. you know, that I could give myself the time, the patience, the discipline, the commitment, the dedication to walk a process to reach a potential within myself. So here is then the definition of utmost potential. It is essentially also, you know, living a potential within yourself to its utmost. Like, for example, with me, and here also bringing in the process that we're walking with soul, which is the process of defining, redefining, and living words. Where firstly, you know, I walked a process of defining my relationship to taking responsibility, or, you know, even managing many other people. And, you know, just the idea of that initially brought up an exceptional amount of emotions and fears and anxiety and stress, and, you know, all my that moment of who I was right then, you know, it's like everything within me was fighting against, you know, me just assisting and supporting myself to rather sit back, take a breath, and ask myself, but okay, you know, what do I need? What do I need to develop within myself? What do I need to enhance? What do I need to teach myself? What people can I go to guide me, to assist and support me through this process of taking responsibility and managing people, and also managing a part of a company? Now, it's interesting that in that moment when the individual asked me to stand in that position and to take that responsibility, that wasn't the first thing that came up within me. No, the first thing that came up within me was essentially my own self-imposed self-limitations. So this is also something that, you know, you can take with you of when it comes to your potential. What is the definition of, let's simply have a look at your self-potential. You will sometimes discover, but not only discover, actually the process of creation comes first, where you have to create yourself into a potential to discover that potential within you, and then from discovery actually live it. Like, for example, with me, I did not know or even see or could conceive within myself that I could take responsibility for so many people, manage so many people, and manage a part of a company. But when I started the creation process, my self-creation process within that, which is where the process of redefining a word comes in. And my process of redefining the words responsibility and managing and directing and leading, you know, was that process where I had to allow myself the space, the time, the patience to practice, to make mistakes, to stumble and fall. And I mean, it did so happen that, you know, mistakes that I made did cost, you know, the company some money here and there. But, you know, through learning from those mistakes, I actually found better ways to manage or run that part of the company. You know, better ways to manage and direct people, which actually assisted and supported the company later in time a lot more. You know, so even in that process and journey, I also faced many other things within myself and about myself that I never would if I didn't take that first step, you know, in that moment of deciding to, okay, you know, I'm really being thrown in the deep end here. Never done this before. So now let me sit down with myself. What do I need? Who do I need? How do I need to prepare? And then came the process of living, you know, living, taking responsibility, managing people, directing the company. And the living process was challenging, you know, because it's not like me in the beginning making the decision to, for example, now decide to take responsibility, manage all the people, directing the company, that it's just going to happen like that. No. It took a process. I mean, I had to, with awareness, you know, within myself, when whenever I'd be talking to all the people, I'd get shy, I'd get fearful and anxious and nervous, and then I have to breathe and slow myself down, and just always remind myself that, okay, girl, this is the first time. You're going to possibly stumble, make some mistakes here and there, but put yourself out there at least. Take that first step. And then, more and more I started communicating with the people and interacting with them and taking on more and more responsibility, the easier it got, and soon enough, it did take me a year to eventually get to a point where I could look back and go, oh my goodness, I'm not at all, anxious or shy or fearful. And when it comes to people or taking responsibility or directing things, it became so much more natural. And that also expanded into the rest of my life, where overall I started putting myself out there more and sort of talk to people, get to know them, being more relaxed, at ease and comfortable with myself. So also getting back to, the living part is that, even though after that year, I became more natural and comfortable and at ease, taking responsibility, directing the company, managing people, there were moments where I still, even in my process in this time, there's sometimes an extent of responsibility, a point of managing people, directing finances in a company or a business that kind of snowballs you, where it's, again, you're in a position of facing something you've never faced before. But right now, my first response is, okay, what do I need? What skills, abilities, talents do I not have that I need to develop? What knowledge and information or studies do I need to do to assist and support myself? What people do I need to reach out to? So it's not at all anymore a point of just, no, I cannot do this. It's now a point of, how can I do this? And how can I assist and support myself to do this? So here within this example is essentially the gift of what it means to create and discover and live a potential within yourself to its utmost. Because here again, first, I, through this process, discovered a potential within me, which was to take responsibility, manage people, and direct a company. But now what's the next phase within that was doing that to my utmost, which means that my focus then later on throughout the year started changing to, how can I strengthen my ability to manage people? How can I strengthen myself in taking on more and more responsibility? How can I enhance my relationship to directing finances, money, or a whole company and things like that? So this is then the definition of utmost. So utmost potential is that moment that you reach within your process of your self-creation and self-development, where you've initially started walking a path and a process of identifying a potential that you'd like to create, discover, and live. And then once you start getting into the groove of living it, you start enhancing, strengthening that potential to its utmost. And it was fascinating because I reached a point of my utmost potential, if you would say, in terms of directing things, managing, taking responsibility. But still, even our own utmost potentials can be enhanced, can be strengthened, can become even more. All right. So I'm also now for a moment going to place in the questions, so that in the meantime, if you have any questions within what we have discussed thus far, you can go ahead and ask some questions. But in the meantime, I also, in the beginning, when hearing the words utmost potential, I was like, I kind of hit a blank, You know, when someone spoke the words utmost potential to me, like, I don't know what that means. You know, there was no reference, no memory, no knowledge or information that came up in relation to those words. But what did come up within me, interestingly enough, and this is what most of us do and we can possibly relate to, is that, you know, we look at the words utmost potential and then we think it's like this one thing, you know, this one potential, this one utmost that we can be and become as an individual, when in fact an utmost potential is in fact potentials, and this is plural, many potentials that you can be and become and live to its utmost within yourself and within your lifetime. So, and within that as well, as I've explained, what also came up within me initially, you know, when looking at reading or hearing the words utmost potential, was that it'll happen like that. And goodness, even, you know, during my early 20s, when I was placed in the position of responsibility, there were many moments where I wanted to give up, especially when I make mistakes, you know, within and during that time. But then again came my defining, redefining, and living process of the words mistakes. And initially, you know, making mistakes, I was very hard on myself, obviously, because, you know, I was in my early 20s. It was, you know, my first years being introduced into the system, you know, many different people, working with money and lots of responsibility within that. So I wasn't very, shall we say, skilled at making life mistakes, you know, where you make mistakes when it comes, and it affects, you know, various different people. Let's look at it in a business or company context. It affects money, it affects the business, the company, all the people within that. So, you know, it was a hard journey, definitely thrown into the deep end, but at the same time, exceptionally grateful for it, because, you know, also, I would say what assisted and supported me in a way was that I did tend to be very hard on myself. Being hard on myself in the sense that it's both a gift and a curse, you know, because if you're very hard on yourself, it does sometimes take time to stand up out of it again. But then again, it did assist and support me to push myself more, push myself harder. So when I started realizing in that process of living my potential, of taking responsibility, managing people, directing a company or business, you know, that I was making so many mistakes and I was reacting to them, you know, there again, I walked the process of, as I mentioned, defining, redefining, and living the word mistake. So I defined mistakes, which is to mean that I first worked through my forgiveness processes, my writings, you know, releasing any ideas, perceptions, beliefs, and emotions that I had in relation to the word mistake. You know, because that's also quite interesting in that when I'd make a mistake, you know, the words would come up in my head like, you have made a mistake. And just with seeing even the words in my own mind, I would almost fall and crash and just want to roll up in a little bundle and not be seen by the world. But, you know, with walking that process and then redefining my relationship to mistakes, which was that mistakes was simply a mistake. Okay, I mistook that moment, didn't take charge, I didn't direct, I didn't stand effectively. So next time it comes around, I will learn from my past experience, my past mistake, and take again. So always, whenever I made a mistake, I'd then see, okay, again, take that breath in, breath out, step back, and ask myself, what can I learn? What can I do better next time? How can I change next time? And then I would actually do better next time and change next time. I mean, that was also a process in itself, you know, to walk, where I'd sometimes make mistakes and then prepare myself to do better, but then make the same mistake or a similar one again, or even worse. So that also got me back up on my feet very quickly when I saw that when I make a mistake and I want to learn from it, I must actually change the next time. So in my journey through the word mistake, I lived my change when it came to mistakes to my utmost potential, right? And again, a process of change is not easy. It is challenging, it is difficult, and it is hard. I mean, as I also mentioned, even in my process with living my potential of taking responsibility to its utmost, there were many times, many moments where I wanted to give up, where it felt like this change was not happening fast enough. I was still sometimes so shy, so anxious, so nervous, so introverted. But really, it was in those moments where I allowed myself to change that was the most significant. What do I mean by the moments? Like, for example, there were moments where I had to do presentations, and this was in front of like 50 odd people. And again, I'd never done that in my life before. So like the first time I did that, I was fidgety, I was sweaty, I was breathing heavily in and out, I was stumbling over my words. And I mean, even after that, some people came and asked me, am I sure that I'm supposed to be in this position and be doing this job? But again, that was my first time ever doing it. So even then, I had to stand up for myself and say, look, this was my first time, but I'm learning a lot and I'm always willing to learn. So watch out for the next time. And then the more and more I did presentations and the more I reflected on my previous ones and, words I could speak to myself, just forgiveness statements, just breathing techniques, preparing more effectively, I started building my confidence and my capacity to stand, to communicate, to speak to many people. So, here you're going to be going through your ups and downs in the process of living a potential to its utmost. But that is your defining moment. And this is the one thing that you must remember that is of utmost importance in this process to utmost potential is, whenever I had those falls, whenever I had those moments of wanting to give up, whenever I had those moments of wanting to break down and just walk away and just go back to my comfort zone, that's also another interesting reference that you can use. We always sometimes have our little comfort zones. My introverted, shyness, anxious, nervous self would have always just wanted to stay in the background, not be noticed, not be seen, just keep to myself, do things, only, like around, not being in the center, that would have been my comfort zone, and I would have stayed like that for the rest of my life. And that was also kind of a scary thought, that if I did not allow myself to take that step of creating myself, of, in that creation process, discovering a potential within me and then living it, so many doors in my life wouldn't have opened up. And this is what you can also look at for yourself in your personal life, your everyday life experiences, in relation to your relationships with people, your work environment, decisions and choices that you make, your future, things like that. I mean, have a look at where you're in a comfort zone, in the sense of, like, for example, with me, where do you sometimes always only want to stay in the background? Not be noticed, not be seen, not stand in the forefront. Or, where sometimes you may even see yourself in a particular position or job, or going for a certain experience. But there's so many things inside your thoughts and your emotions and your personality that's kind of saying, no, you can't do that. You've never done that. You shouldn't. You're not prepared. You don't have the skill. You don't have the talent. I mean, those very type of thoughts and emotional experiences are actually coming from your comfort zone within yourself. So breaking through a comfort zone is scary. It's challenging and it's frightening. I mean, it was for me as well, very much so. And it did take time to break through my comfort zones. But again, it was worth it. And what also stood and supported me through my journey was again, in those moments where I wanted to give up or walk away or break down or go back to my comfort zone, was where I just kept my process within myself. I kept reminding myself, come on, girl, you've come this far. Come on, girl, you've already made the decision. So you've already taken that one step. So you might as well take the other step and walk this process. And that one point, that reminder I set for myself of, come on, you've never been in this situation before. You've never done this for yourself before. You've got support and assistance from people. You have got the, the skills, talents, and abilities that you can develop. Do more studying, do more reading, find more information. So that always, brought me back to my decision, my choice. And, this also in itself is something quite interesting, where we sometimes make a decision and we even give up on our own decisions quite quickly because, we don't feel we've got the capacity to do it, or we don't experience or see ourselves doing it. But again, what I had to do is I had to almost make that decision for myself every day anew. So like every day I would go through my doubts, my fears, my insecurities, and then again I'd remind myself, no, I'm going to walk this process. I'm going to create this potential of taking responsibility within myself. And then I would just go again back to the drawing board, going into detail of, okay, what am I scared of? What am I nervous about? What am I anxious about? And if it was, for example, about talking to people or doing a presentation or directing the company, I would then just again ask myself, okay, what do you need? How do you need to prepare? Who can you ask for help? So it was interesting, like in the first couple of months, like my comfort zone part of me wanted to like rear its head and kind of step in and limit me and suppress me. And it's like this part of me that was busy developing into my potential, and I kind of had to stand and stand up and stand again until my potential became natural within me. And my comfort zone was but a memory. And now I'm in a process where, I'm living that potential within myself to my utmost. And within the process that I've walked, I can assist and support so many others, who may be able to relate to a same or similar experience. All right, so here then a definition of utmost potential: to identify potentials within yourself that you can live to your utmost. And I must say, it will take brave, courageous individuals who would be able to identify, create, discover, and live potentials within yourself, because it is a process. But again, as I said, it's worth it. You shouldn't also ever, let's necessarily say, put a time frame on this. I mean, even in my life, it took me a year, for example. I've met people who were more shy, introverted, and anxious and fearful than me, and they managed to transcend their comfort zone in a couple of months. So the one point is always you being honest with yourself in the process that you're walking, taking it literally day by day. So what I'd like everyone to take with you for this hangout is identify potentials, or even identify potentials that you would like to create within you, and have a look at asking yourself the questions instead of going, oh, I can't do that, or I can never see myself doing that, or I don't have the abilities or skills or talents or people to ask. Then you take a breath, take that step back and go, you know what? No, I'm going to create this potential within myself. And I'm going to not only create the potential, I'm going to from there live it to my utmost. Okay. I mean, this is the essence of self-creation, of life creation. It's existent in the words utmost potential. And the greatest gift even within that is that you're creating it yourself, for yourself, with awareness. All right. And within this as well, I mean, taking the examples that I walked in the beginning of this video, where I expressed that, you sometimes have a moment's conversation with someone, and you sometimes reflect and look back and you wish you could have done it better or said things better or in a different way or a best way for you and for another. You know, those moments, those type of reflections that you have back that you sometimes go into regret, whenever you have those moments, those are little seeds for potentials within yourself that you can live to the utmost. I mean, I've learned even in the small, like in such instances, if I go back to that memory, look at where I made a mistake, where I mistook the moment, and then learn from it to retake it the next time, that I develop potentials within me to communicate better, to handle myself better, to express myself better, to direct my own emotions and my thoughts a lot more effectively. Because most of the time, I realized I would say things and do things when my emotions got the better of me and the best of me. That's also an interesting saying, is it not? Our emotions and our thoughts tend to limit and suppress our best, our utmost, the better we know we can be in moments. And that's only even looking at the moment. So this is also something that you can start practicing, you know, living potentials within yourself to their utmost. Look at learning from such moments as much as possible and prepare yourself for a next time to speak better, to communicate better, to handle the moment a lot better within the way that you know you can within yourself. See, that's also something quite interesting with potentials. You know, in looking back at living my potential of taking responsibility to its utmost, is that yes, it is to a degree that I created that potential within me, but at the same time, I wouldn't have even been able to create it if that potential didn't already exist within me in some way or another. Now, see here, I was very fortunate to have that individual in my life who saw that potential within me. They saw it deep within me. But again, they had the ability and the capacity to see such kind of hidden potentials. The problem with most of us in our lifetimes is that we'd be very lucky to meet such people in our lives. Most of the time, we've got to find our own potentials. We've got to discover them. We've got to create them. Like, for example, if that individual did not see that potential and push me to and support me to create and develop that potential within myself, I wouldn't have realized it, you know. And again, they only saw it. I obviously, yes, a lot of it was also dependent on me in the sense that I was the one who actually had to walk the process to create it inside myself, to develop it, to live it. That individual couldn't do that for me, no, not at all. But just that one seed of them seeing the potential within me is already what made a major difference. You know? So you have to be that individual for yourself. We have to be that individual for ourselves, where we start seeing and identifying, creating, discovering, and living our own potentials. And those potentials you can see through having a look at your tendency for comfort zones, when your thoughts or emotions and experiences inside yourself, you know, kind of goes into the direction of, I can't do this, it's impossible, I don't see myself doing that. And then thirdly, in even those subtle, small, seemingly insignificant moments, you know, where you reflect on a past moment and you go, I could have done it better, I should have done it better. I see if I had done it this way or that way, it would have turned out best for me and for them. Those are also cross-reference moments that you can use of, aha, okay, here's some potentials within me that I can develop. All right, so this then concludes the main discussion and content and context for the process of defining, redefining, and living the words utmost potential. We also had a look at the individual words potential and utmost, and how each one of you can also practically have a look at identifying your potentials and living them to their utmost. So, you know, don't limit the words utmost potential to thinking it's just one thing. No, there can be many potentials within you that you can live to your utmost. And now we have some time for questions. I see we have one question here. I can see that there exists in the worst case scenario where my greatest fear exists, the potential to learn the utmost about myself. Can you relate to that? Well, what I found is, I mean, we've been walking some communications and discussions in relation to the worst case scenario and, you know, the fears that we sometimes experience within that. And you can also look out for the some more videos and material soon to come in relation to the words worst case scenario and the fear within that. I mean, fear here, you are looking at sometimes if you write out your worst case scenario. Like, for example, it's like within my process and journey through learning what it means to live, the words taking responsibility, and you know, discovering and living my potential within that, is I'd sometimes walk into a room, you know, having to do the presentation, and this worst case scenario would come up within me of me not being able to speak, you know, me losing my place, me not bringing the information across effectively, and then all those people are not going to understand what they have to do and how they have to do it, and then that's going to affect the business in some way or another. And then if it affects the business is going to lose money, and then it's going to be my fault, and then I'm going to be fired even before I started. So, you know, worst case scenario imaginations can really spin things way out of control. So what I did then is I wrote out my worst case scenario and walked through the fear within that. Walked through the fear, meaning just dropping the fear emotion through self-forgiveness, so that I can just look at the fear in a more practical, commonsensical way. And I was like, okay, if this were to happen, how would I handle it? Who would I be within it? So then I'd look at all the outflow consequences that came up in my worst case scenario. Okay, if they then do not understand at all what I was talking about, if I lost my place, you know, if the whole presentation went completely haywire, then I would go back to each one, or, you know, go back to the room, ask them to give me another opportunity or a chance, you know. So I would go through each outflow consequence and stand there and just ask myself, okay, what would be the best way to direct or handle this consequence or this problem if it were to happen? So yes, from a certain perspective, if you walk through and work through your worst case scenario and your fear within that in writing quite effectively, then you can also through that discover quite a bit about yourself. Because when I was then looking at solutions to the consequences or the problems that came up within the worst case scenario with fear, I was quite surprised, you know, at the solutions that I could come up with, and that I could see myself capable of creating those solutions, standing in those solutions. So that's also quite a nice source or resource to discover and uncover potentials within yourself. All right, everyone. This then concludes the video for the words utmost potential that we've used quite often within our soul videos and promotions. And hope that everyone can take these words with you and start defining, redefining, and living your potentials to their utmost, to discover and realize and live the potential, the best, the better that you can be and become within this lifetime, purely through you making the decision to, through you having the patience, dedication, and commitment and discipline to do so. All right. Thank you very much, everyone.